Alright, so this video is specifically for that person who is naturally more quiet, more introverted, and has always looked upon that as kind of a limitation, something that's going to hold you back from achieving the dream social life, from making a bunch of friends, from meeting girls. And if you were anything like me growing up, you were jealous of your more extroverted friends, the ones who seem to have it easy. They're very comfortable speaking to people they don't know, being loud in public, or being the center of attention. Whereas with me, I always came across as the shy friend, or I'd be the person that get talked over. I'd kind of just fall into the background, like people were kind of indifferent as to whether I was there or not. And that was always like massively depressing for me. Like I thought this was just how it was going to be for my entire life. I'm always going to be that background guy, part of the furniture or whatever. So my solution at the time was to, be more like my extroverted friends, was to force myself to, really up my energy, to be loud, to be really hype in conversations, talk at 1,000,000 miles an hour just so like I can hold people's attention and they're not getting bored. And I had mixed results with that. I'm not going to lie. Like sometimes it went well and I'd make a big impression on people and it seemed like they were really engaged with what I was saying. But it felt like they'd always start to lose interest in me when they realized that I just wasn't that person. I'm not naturally this super extroverted, high energy guy. It always felt to me, and I think to other people, like it was kind of forced and a little bit inauthentic. I'm not really being myself. And then the other pitfall to that is I feel like when you're playing a character, you're almost like acting as someone you're not. It's just incredibly draining. I could never sustain that like super high energy version of myself for longer than, let's say, 20 minutes before I really crashed and I felt super antisocial, like even less talkative than I usually was. So I never really had that much success with it. It was always like temporary success. But what I've realized since then is that whole extroverted, high energy way of socializing, that is just one way to be social. And I think I was like searching up on YouTube how to be more confident as an introverted person, or how to be confident for quiet guys, something like that. When I discovered this like whole new archetype for socializing, for being confident, and that's this archetype of the quiet, confident guy. And basically what this archetype is, it's that person who actually isn't very talkative, who doesn't say that much, but they definitely don't fall into the background. It's actually quite the opposite. Like people tend to notice them, even without them being loud, even without them being super extroverted. Like they just have this natural presence and charisma, despite the fact that they don't talk that much. They're kind of mysterious. They're kind of intriguing. People want to know about them. And yeah, even though they don't say much, it's still like everyone else is going out of their way to talk to them. Like the ball is in their court. The examples that came into my head when I learnt about it were like those old cowboy movies with Clint Eastwood. He's the cowboy and he rocks up to town and he's very quiet and he's very stoic, but you never get the sense it's coming from a place of social anxiety, like he's scared to talk. It's more about like he just has that like level of belief in himself. He's incredibly self-assured, like he doesn't have to go out of his way to impress people. And then another good one is like Batman or Bruce Wayne, very mysterious guy, doesn't actually say that much, but has that aura about him. Like people want to find out more about him. He's like, he's like a playboy. He gets all the girls and everyone's going out their way to impress him despite the fact that he's not that talkative guy. And I know those are kind of just like made up examples, but there's people like this in real life too, like Keanu Reeves, super reserved guy, doesn't really like being in the center of attention even though he's a megastar, but actually he does a job that just like requires him to be the center of attention all the time. And it's like an acting job. He's got to perform and be in front of all these cameras, but he's still like a super down to earth guy. Doesn't say much, but people just worship the ground that he walks on. I asked myself this question: which one would I rather be? Would I rather be that super loud person, kind of obnoxious, kind of extroverted, and has everyone's attention, but it almost feels like it's coming from a place of insecurity? Like they feel like if everyone isn't looking at them, then they're irrelevant. Like they need to sustain people's attention at all times. Otherwise, people just don't give a fuck about them. People don't really value them. Or would I rather be the person who doesn't really have to work for it? Who doesn't say much, but, still has that effortless presence and authority. Like, it doesn't really seem like they're even trying. They're not super talkative, but still everyone wants to get to know them. For me, it's definitely the latter, and that fits in more with my personality type. So I'm going to teach you how to embody this archetype of the dark, confident introvert, or the quiet, confident person who doesn't need to impress other people, who makes it seem effortless. And the most important advice I have to give you isn't actually a specific technique or a social skills tip. It's actually more about the mindset. It's more about the work that you do before you enter these social situations. So let's think about the mindset of a socially anxious person, someone who is kind of uncomfortable in social situations. You could be one of those people who falls into the background even more, who gets even less talkative because they're shy and a bit uncertain. But what people don't talk about enough is you could also be that more extroverted person. That person I described who is kind of loud and obnoxious. Like, you probably know that guy who has to be the funny guy 24/7. He's always telling jokes. He needs to command the attention of other people. And it gets kind of annoying after a while. People don't mention enough how that's actually coming from a place of insecurity. That is textbook approval-seeking behavior. And you'll notice this next time. This is actually sub-communicating. I'm trying to convince other people that I am worthy of their time. Like, if they're not paying attention to me 24/7, then I'm irrelevant. Or, I'm only as good as how funny I can be. Like, this is the case for a lot of these like loud and obnoxious types. And this kind of sold me on the idea that I don't really want to be like that, because that behavior is needy. Neediness is one of the most unattractive traits to be found in other people. It's the opposite of effortless. It feels like they're trying too hard, like they kind of want something from you. And it's kind of desperate. Like, it sounds like I'm being harsh, but it's unattractive. Whereas the truly confident guy, he doesn't need to be the center of attention at all times. Like, he knows who he is. He doesn't need to impress other people, because as far as he's concerned, he's already proven himself in his own eyes. He has that kind of level of arrogance. He doesn't necessarily think he's better than other people, but he knows what he is worth. And to obtain that level of confidence, this is going to sound like some backwards advice, but just listen up. You obtain that level of confidence through competence, through putting hundreds, even thousands of hours into mastering a skill, or like working on a very time-consuming project. So I'll use the example of my YouTube channel. So I'm aware that I'm not some viral YouTuber. Like, I'm not internet famous or anything like that. And while I'd hope to get to that level one day, I've still poured hundreds of hours into this pursuit of becoming a better YouTuber and leveling up my skills and my speaking on camera. Now, I'm not saying I'm the best. I still have a lot of work to do. But if you were to compare that to my first ever videos, the difference is night and day. Like, it is so much better in pretty much every way. Now, the point I'm trying to make, the reason I'm telling you this, is it's impossible to put that amount of time into one skill and not see some kind of improvement, to not develop this belief in your own ability. Like, actually, I am good at something that a lot of people aren't good at. And again, this might seem like kind of backwards advice, but that confidence does not just end with my YouTube or a particular skill. That confidence and level of belief that I have in myself bleeds over into pretty much every other area of my life. I'll go into social situations and, like conversations with this level of belief in myself, this calm self-assurance that actually, I am a person of value. I can contribute something to these conversations. I don't have to go out of my way to prove something to other people. And the other dimension of that is as simple as actions over words. People respect other people who are highly skilled or competent in a particular area. That is just human nature. We respect people who are high status, who are known for being one of the best at something. And that could be any number of things. But the point I'm making is that they don't get that respect from their words, from being the most talkative person or whatever. Or it's almost more of an aura kind of thing. Like when you look at a famous person or an athlete, it doesn't actually matter what comes out of their mouth. It's kind of, they just have that aura about them because they're known for being high status in this particular area. So have a think about what this could be for you. Like obviously for me, it's my YouTube. A really good pursuit to get into is sports as well. Like sports can be absolutely transformative if you're willing to put in the time. Like my brother started boxing a couple of years ago. And before, he was kind of like me. He grew up more introverted, didn't have a lot of confidence in himself. But literally just in a couple of years, like his confidence has tripled. He's more confident than me. Like he's one of the most self-assured, driven people that I know in my life. Really, it's just anything that you can throw yourself into, really immerse yourself. And you have that natural curiosity that would make you want to spend hundreds of hours. Like that process could be challenging, but also fun for you at the same time. So have a think about what that could be for you. So I want to acknowledge something you might be thinking, and that's that all the people I've brought up, all the examples, they've already been quite famous people. They're already well known for being experts in a particular area. They're all high status. This idea of quiet confidence might work for them because they already have that social standing. They don't feel like they need to impress people because people already respect them. But is it going to work for the average introvert? The guy who naturally falls into the background in social situations, who, if he's not careful, is just going to end up standing in the corner of the party, not speaking to anyone. Because I've been in that situation. So it's all about finding a balance of, contributing to the discussions, as well as like using that introvert's power to your advantage, that quiet confidence. And there is quite a simple solution to this. I want to give you some like highly actionable advice that you can actually take forward from this. The solution is, whenever you do speak, even if it's not much, you just have to make it count. You have to make it something very valuable. There's always that guy who's just, you can never stop him from talking. Like, again, probably one of these extroverted people where it's coming from a place of anxiety and they just feel like they need to talk and talk and talk. Because that guy says so much, you kind of just tune out of what he's saying. Like, oh, this guy's talking again. Like, he's probably just talking pure shit. And you begin to associate his dialogue with that of low importance. Whereas even if you're a guy who doesn't speak that often, but if every time you do speak, you say something very valuable or something that gets people thinking, people will naturally start to pay attention to you. Like, oh shit, he's talking. He's going to say something very deep or profound. They will naturally pay attention to you if what you're saying is valuable. So I've got 2 highly actionable steps for you to practice in order to get better at this. So this is my quiet confidence framework. So the first is, in order to actually come out with valuable responses, and when you speak, it is something worth listening to, you have to have a good understanding of what's even being said. So you need to practice the skills of being observant and active listening. If you're someone with a divided attention span, you're listening, but you're not really listening. You're on your phone. The other person doesn't have your full attention. You're not going to draw any meaningful insights out of what they're saying. So you're not going to provide a meaningful answer. You don't want to be the guy just repeating things that other people have said and not contributing anything new. So a really good way to tell if you're properly listening, you're properly present in what's being said, is if you're already coming up with your own response, if you're already crafting a response before they finish talking, then you're not properly present. You're not actually listening to what the other person is saying. True presence in conversations is when they finish talking, you take a moment to let their words sink in before coming up with a more thoughtful and meaningful response based on what they've said. That is the best way to go about it. Now, the second thing is this idea that I really like called tactical silence. Now, this lends itself to the point about listening, because if you're truly present and listening to the other person, then naturally you are going to land on moments of silence where you're thinking of the proper response. But it can also be artificial silence. It can also be like a fake pause of about 3, 4, or 5 seconds after they've stopped talking. And that elevates what you're saying into something a lot more profound. They'll see that you're taking the time to come up with a response, even if you're faking it. And they'll just assume, wow, he's really thinking about this. He's being very deliberate and intentional with what he's about to say. And that almost prompts them to pay attention to you. But, it's also this idea of everyone rushing out their words because they're nervous and, they want to fill the silence, even if it's just empty words. If you're someone who appears to be comfortable with silence and at least makes it seem like the reason for your silence is because you're about to say something profound and you're being very deliberate you're not wasting any words. You just seem like very in control, almost socially powerful, like in control of the situation. And that is high status as fuck. Like people just assume you're someone with authority. You're someone who they need to impress. They need to start going out of their way to seek your approval. And I've observed this in real time, so many situations. So this is definitely something that you need to practice. So combine that framework I just gave you of active listening and tactical silence with the advice I gave before about true confidence coming from competence. And you've arrived at the quiet, confident archetype. And it will take some time to reach this. Like, I'm not saying I have no desire to impress other people or I'm not socially anxious around people that I don't know. But it's been a really amazing journey of just leaning into my more natural introvertedness and not feeling like that's an absolute curse that is going to hold me back. You'd be surprised at how high status and powerful you can come across just by leaning into this side of yourself. So I hope this was helpful, bro. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments and drop a sub if this helps you out. I'll see you in the next one.